but she's like the oracle. But they refer to Warren Buffett as the oracle. Like tech stocks, they consider her the oracle. So we're going to learn about a Jewish woman who was just like Kathy Woods, who knew how to pick good stocks and multiply her fortunes exponentially. And we're going to also learn that people who are in the Thailand business are particularly horny. We're going to learn about that today also. So there's a vast array of interesting information that we're going to be discussing. So let's get started. We are up to the two dots that are 4 lines down into the very wide lines. Tonu Rabban.
Down from 1.
Oh, so that's it. But the Kathy Wood that I'm going to tell you about never, ever, ever saw a drop in the value of her portfolio. It only went up. Tanu Rabbanan. Hooray, Shenasnu La Ben Lahanik. They gave a woman, in other words, they paid her to be a wet nurse. They hired her to nurse a baby. So she has now a serious responsibility to do her job to the fullest. Therefore, Harezu Loy Sonik Imoy, Loy Bena, she's not allowed to simultaneously nurse her son. So if she has a son to nurse, she has to stop nursing her son because she's committed to nurse this other child. Loy Ben Chaverta, and it's not like babysitting where you can take 10 kids in. If you're in the nursing business, you can only have 1 client at a time. That's rule number 1. Rule number 2, Piska Kima, even if they only paid her enough to eat minimally, she has to eat a lot so that she should have plentiful milk. And the third rule is, she's not allowed to eat foods that will hurt the nursing, that will make it bad for her milk. So we're going to now analyze these 3 rules. It says you shouldn't be yoinik your son and not ben chaverta. So hashta bena amrit loy, if we don't even let her nurse her own children, ben chaverta mi boy, do I need the bride to tell me that you can't nurse another stranger? So the more maudu tema bena hu dechai siluya mamsi leitfei. You might think it's only also for her to nurse her own child. You know why? Because she'll be very concerned to make sure that her child drinks his full fill, and therefore there might not be enough left over for the child whom she's contracted to nurse. But if it's just another client, she'll make sure that everyone gets even. Unless she has extra, she's not going to nurse anybody else. Kamash Malon, that even another child who she's not emotionally attached to, she's still not allowed to take on. So that was the first rule we analyzed. Now we have another rule. Paska Kima Ochelas Harbe. She's a mechuyev to eat a lot of food, so her milk should be plentiful. Mehecha. So where is she supposed to get the money from if they didn't give her money for her to eat like that? Amar Psheshes Mishalah. She has to take out money from her own pocket to purchase an abundance of food so that she should have milk that's plentiful. Loi soichel imoy devarim haroim. She shouldn't eat things that are bad for the milk. Minding what items are bad for the milk. So if we have a lech specialist here or a nursing specialist, we would love to know what's going on. So Amar Kana, Amar Kana could go in kashois such as hops, vichozis, and if anybody has an art scroll, they could help me. I know kashas are hops. Kashas are small vegetation. The dogam katanim and small fish, vadoma and earth that women used to eat. People used to eat it. It had some type of health. It had some type of health advantage. People ate earth sometimes. Abai Amar afilu kara v'chavusha. Kara, I believe, is some type of gourd. It's palm shoots. V'chavusha. And unripened grapes. Papa Amar afilu kara v'kufra. Kufra are dates, unripened dates.
Sorry. Kara is squash.
Squash. Oh, that was gourds, right? Quinces. Okay, I don't know what those things are. I don't even eat those by Shechianu. And your Papa Amar afilu kara v'kufra.
That's palm shoot.
And kufra is unripened dates. Yeah. Ba'ashi Amar afilu kamcha b'harsana, which are some type of fish dishes. I think Rashi says what those are. There's some types of fish dishes. Kamcha is kutach, which is cheese with spoiled milk mixed with some liquid. instead of a dip. The harsana are dogim tugonen bekemach, small fish that are fried in flour, vitzir, and the shuman, and the fish juice as well as the fat from the fish, that shouldn't be eaten either. So what's wrong with all of these foods? Minayu paski chaba. Some of these foods cause your milk to dry up, and minayu achri chaba. And some of these foods cause the milk to get spoiled and ruined. So that's why you shouldn't drink these drinks. It's interesting. Rabbi Rosner spoke out from somewhere that one of the things out of all the different things that the mun was able to taste like, the mun was not able to taste like fish. And the reason why the mun wasn't able to taste like fish is because it limits a woman's ability to be able to nurse her children. So the one thing that the mun didn't taste like was fish, and that's why Klal Yisrael said, Zacharnu es hadaga, because that's the one taste that they couldn't have with the mun. It's interesting, based on this, that the taste of an item is the essence of the item. Because why couldn't it taste like fish and not be fish? Like equal, like sugar twin, right? But vice versa, if something tastes a certain way, it actually has an impact. That's why I'm having a mental block. What's the shul's doctor? Dr. Phillipson tells me that sweetener is almost as harmful to you as sugar. Yeah. Okay, but that's not what Dr. Poon says. He said have sweetener, it's not sugar. Okay, because it fools your system into thinking. Now we're going to give advice on if you want your children to turn out a certain way, when should you have relations? It might be a little too late for us, but at least for the next generation, you might want to call your children and let them know about the Gemara that you learned today. Maybe not. If someone does tashmish with his wife near a mill, now if you're near a mill, what a mill sounds like, it's similar to if you live near a subway station. There's rumbling and grinding and vibration. So if someone does tashmish during that time, he's going to have Rahman children who get seizures like epilepsy. The Misham Shal Ira, if one has relations on the ground, Havala b'nei Shemuti. They'll have children with long necks. I'm not sure the link between them. The Darcha al Doma de Chavra. I mean, it is Rama by me, but there's a star that tells you Doma. If a woman steps on the blood of a donkey, then Havala b'nei Girdani. Girdani means someone who either he loses his hair, or someone who with terrible wounds on his face. I guess very, very bad skin, like terrible acne. What's interesting about Punkta Dama, the Chamor is the only behemoth Tmeya that has Kedusha, that a Peter Chamor, there's no other type of korban or offering done with any behemoth Tmeya, except by a Chamor, there's a Peter Chamor. If somebody eats mustard, if a pregnant woman eats mustard, Havala b'nei Zalzalni. She'll have children who are always hungry. Rav Sonim. The achla, I knew my mother shouldn't have eaten mustard. The achla tachli, if they eat tachli, which Rashi says is where's Rashi? No, Rashi doesn't say. It's kachol, it's cress, right? I think that's what it means. I'm not sure what that is, but I guess some type of vegetable. Then havala b'nei dofani. She'll have children whose eyes are constantly tearing. They'll tear a lot. Dachla mununi, if she eats munini, Rashi says, Hergala lechal dogim ktanim, these are small little fish. Havalu b'nei mitzitzi eina. She'll have people whose eyes whose eyes dart back and forth. The achla gargushta, if she eats earth, Havalu b'nei muchuari. She'll have ugly children. The shashi shichra, if she drinks beer, Havala b'nei uchmi, she'll have dark children. So if they're tall and handsome, it wouldn't be that bad. The achla bisra, but the best thing is if she eats meat during her pregnancy, the shasi chamer, and drinks wine, havalu b'nei barye, she will have healthy children. So that's the best thing to do, is to drink wine and to eat meat. It's not good for pregnant women. Yeah. But the Gemara says differently. The achla bay, if a woman eats eggs during her pregnancy, havalu b'nei inani, she'll have He says, enemy means inayim gedolos. They'll have big eyes. Dachla kavri, if she eats fish, havala b'nei chinni. She'll have children who are balechein, children that are loved. The achla karpasa, so it's karpas. I think it's referring to like parsley, maybe, or celery. Havalu b'nei ziyusni. Her children will have a nice shine to them. They'll have a nice complexion. The achla kuzbara, if she eats kuzbara, that's coriander. I don't even know what that is, but I've heard it before. I think the only place I ever heard of the vegetable coriander is in ArtScroll. Under a garden. Havale b'nei bisruni. She'll have zaftige children. The achla esroiga, if she eats an esrig, I'm not sure if that includes the esrig jam. Havale b'nei rechni. Her children will have a very nice aroma to them. Barte de Shvar Malka, the daughter of Shvar Malka, achla ba'ima esroiga. So the daughter of Shvar Malka, her mother, meaning the Shvar Malka's wife, ate esrig while she was expecting this daughter. And she always had such a nice aroma. Whenever they were bringing out for Shvar Malka different besamim for him to enjoy, they would bring her out first because she had a very nice aroma. I think Biden also runs into that a lot. He finds that he likes smelling women. So could be he picks women that their mothers ate esrig during the pregnancy. Amar Rafuna said, Badak lon Rafuna bar Chinina. Rafuna bar Chinina wanted to see how well we knew our stuff, so he probed us with some questions. What happens if he omeres lahani? She wants to nurse. Now, in those days, the upper class people would not nurse. They would pay a wet nurse to nurse their child for them. But she wants to nurse her own child. He says, no. I'll get you a nurse. I don't want you to nurse. You listen to her. Why? Because Tzaira Didahu. There's several pshatim in the Rishonim what Tzaira Didahu means. Rashi says, Tzaira Didahu means Hachalav Rav Bidadeh Tzaira. Very pashut pshat. If a woman has milk and she can't nurse, it's very painful for her. So therefore, she has a right to nurse. Now, those who started who is because a mother wants to nurse her child, and since a mother wants to nurse her child, it's painful for her that you cannot bother with the child. And a third shot is that it's nothing about her pain or anything. It's her right. Sorry to know. She's entitled. It's her business, and he has no business mixing in to her personal issues that aren't relevant to him. What if it's the opposite? He says, "I want you to nurse." And she doesn't want. If it's not to derech, then you listen to her, and he cannot force her. What about if it's he urcha, who lav urche? It was her family minik to nurse, and it was not his family minik. And he wants her to nurse against her family minik, and she doesn't want to nurse. Basar di deyaz linan, do you follow his minig, which would allow her not to nurse? Or basar di daz linan, which would make her nurse? Upashit nalai, and we replace the shaila meha. It says oila imai veina yoredes, meaning if she is on a higher social class, well then he has to maintain her level. But even if she's on a lower class than him, then she automatically steps up to his class. So therefore, if it was her family's minute to nurse, and it was his family minute not to nurse, and he wanted her to nurse, but she didn't, she has the right not to nurse because she has the right to go up to the class that his family is in. Amr Avuna Maikar, where do you see this in the Psukim? It says V'hibulas Baal, which is what HaKadosh Baruch Hu told Avimelech, that you took Sarah Imenu and she's Bu'ulas Baal. So there are those who learn that it could have said V'hi Eishes Ish. First time is Bu'ulas Baal. So Lashon Bu'ulas Baal is you have to Baliyosei Shel Baal. She's on a high level on the level of Avram Avinu. And there are those who explain that that's why HaKadosh Baruch Hu made Avimelech give Sarah a lot of money, because really she was in a very high social class. being part of the elite family of Avram Avinu. Avram was traveling; he didn't have so much money with him, but HaKadosh Baruch Hu required of Avimelech to give her enough money so that she could live the lifestyle that Avram Avinu was accustomed to. But she'll never have to lower her level to that of the husband. This is talking about Chava. Chava was the Eim Kol Chai, and we learn from there that L'chayim nitna v'lo l'tzar nitna. She's supposed to have children and be a mother to make it better for her, not worse for her. Rashi says, no, Rashi doesn't say it. Rashi does not say it. So there's actually a shaila in the Rishonim if there's a difference in halacha between these two pshatim. So there's two svaras that are offered in the Rishonim. We had a shaila earlier. If even when a man buries his wife, does he also have to bury her on the level of his family? Maybe when it's oila imoy, that's only b'chayel. While she's alive, he has to treat her on the highest level. However, once she dies, maybe he can bury her on her family's level, maybe on a lower level. So there is actually a machlokes. So there are those who want to learn that if you hold it, we learn it from the Hebrew las baal, well then it's only while she's married to her husband, when she's alive, that she's entitled to this higher lifestyle. But if you learn it kiyash ein plachai, then you would learn that she's on that level no matter what, because she's ein plachai. And there's another shayla about erison before Nisuin, or I'm sorry, if there's Nisuin, there was no bia, does he still have to give her that level? So once again, they say it's totally in this. Bibul Asbal would mean only when they're living together, and Kiyosha in Polchai would apply the same halacha no matter what. Okay, now the Mishnah discusses what malacha she's alleviated from if she brings in a shivcha. So the Mishnah says that she's released from doing certain avodas. Hashar avda. But all the rest of the avodas that was in the list of the Mishnah, she would have to do. Frank the Gemara, why? The same Eloi, let her tell him, I brought you a wife, another woman instead of me. I was going to do all of the avodas, of all of the four goitas. So if I brought in one goita, that should be enough to cover for me because I'm also one person. Zog the Gemara, she can't say that. You know why? Mishum the Omar law, because he'll tell her back that's not true. Because there's an extra mouth to feed now, the shivcha. So he'll say, "Ha tarcha l'didi u'l'dida." She will be able to cover all of your responsibilities that you would have done for the household, as well as mine, as well as for personal needs. But kamadidach, who's going to work to take care of your needs, cook your meals, clean your clothing, man tarach. So therefore, there's still a deficit, there's still a gap in what needs to be done that you have to pay. The Rishonim asks, Tosfos asks him, I don't understand. She brings in a goita, but who has to now feed that goita? Who has to feed that shivcha? He does. So why is it fair that she brings in a goita, her husband has to support it, and she should get out of doing malacha? So there are those who learn that she has to bring in enough money that not only is she bringing the goita with her, she's also bringing all the needs of the goita. So there's no expense to her husband. But there were still additional malachas that the Mishnah lists off that you would need to do, even if she had two shivchos that she brought. Let her say, I have for you enough manpower that could take care of your needs, her needs, and the other one will be for me and for her. So we have everything we need. So one is for me and for herself, and the other guy will be for you and for herself. So why do I have to do any malach at all? Because the husband tells her, what are you talking about? Once we have two help in the house, so now we're already a house that's considered a bigger home, more well-known. So we're going to have guests. And you see from here that a woman doesn't have a right to say, I don't want to have guests. A Yiddish estiv, a Jewish home, always has guests. If it's a house with two masharsim, if it's a house with two maids, for sure a house like that is going to attract guests, and those guests will once again require someone to work with them. Shalosh, if she brings a third helper in, ein mitzvah samita, she doesn't have to make the beds, but there's still stuff that she has to do. Hashayra avda, once again, the time malay, ailis lach achriti la'archi aparchi. Why do I have to work after the second goita that I brought in? Because you're concerned about the guests. I even have a third maid that's going to exclusively work for the guests. We should be Amarla, Navish B'nei Besa, Navish Ochei Parchi. If we have three guys in the house, we're going to attract crowds. So again, one shivcha will not be enough to take care of the crowds. We need a team. In fact, if that's the case, Ein Ladover Saif, Yachi Afilu Arba Nami, it's going to attract more and more. Yes. Zok no. Arba Kivin Denefisha Lahu Misaina Dodi. Once there's four women on a team, there's a certain synergy that makes them very productive, and there's something called economies of scale that they'll be able to handle whatever is brought in, and therefore she can sit a katadra on her throne. She could go to the spa and get her nails done. What happens if it doesn't mean that she actually brought in help with her? She didn't actually bring in help. If she brought in enough money, enough assets into the marriage, that there is money to be able to hire these helpers, even though she actually didn't hire them yet. Not only if she brought money in, what if every week when her husband gave her money, she was very frugal and very careful with her expenditures, and she was able to put away some extra money, and through that she's able to hire help, that also is hers, and she'll be able to release herself from the different malachas, depending on how many goytas she can afford. If she has four already, then she can sit on her throne and relax. That's l'gabi malacha. But there's certain things that women do for their husbands that are derech chiba that have to be done anyway, such as avol moizeges loy kois. She would still have to pour a kois for him. Umatzas loy yasamita, and it doesn't mean she has to make his bed. It means to turn down his bed, to put the chocolates on his pillow before bedtime, to prepare his bed. That's the derech chiba part, not the chore part. Umarchetzes loy panav yodav v'raglo, and she washes him. Nowadays, we could shower on our own, but she would prepare the bath for him. These are things that a woman has to do to her husband, which are derech chiba. But because they're identified as things that are derech chiba, so then they wouldn't be able to be done when a woman is usher to her husband, which is nida. Amar Buna, hamalacha isha oisa labayla, nida oisa labayla, except chutz mimizigas hakais. That's why, because these are things that are derech chiba, like we just discussed. Amar bitu b'chananya amar afuna kamalacha sha'isa oisha labayla nida oisha labayla chutz mimizigas hakois v'atzas hamita v'harchatas panav yodav v'raglov. Zok Gemara v'atzas hamita. Let's give some clarity. Amar Rebbe lo amrun ela b'fanav. If she does that while he's watching, that's derech chiba. If she does it and she's not there, that wouldn't be a problem. So there's a whole discussion here in the Rishonim. It's actually on the next line of the Gemara. Now that we're discussing certain things that Anita cannot do for her husband because they're derech chiba and it could lead to more things, the Gemara elaborates on that a little bit. A woman is not allowed to pour a kois for her husband. Shmuel machalfale devisu biyada desmala. Shmuel's wife would pour it in her left hand. The question here we're gonna focus on here is if she poured it for her with her left hand, did she actually hand it to him, or did she hand it to him but it was with her left hand? Rashi also says bimei libuna. So we're going to focus on that in a minute as well. So she handed it to him with her left hand. Most Rishonim learn she didn't hand it to him. Even though she did it with her left hand, she still didn't hand it to him. Because there's the question of, are you allowed to hand something from your hand to your wife's hand? Never mind a kois, which is derech chiba, anything. Are you allowed to pass something from your hand to your wife's hand? We all learned about our chakras, that when your wife is in need, you're not allowed to pass something directly to her. So they learned that of here, it wasn't passed directly to her. But even the preparation of the kois for him was done with her left hand. She wouldn't hand it to him. She would put it on the top of a jug. Again, it showed that there's a distinction there. And Rava Abe Sadya, he would put it on a little bench that they had there. I'm sorry. I'm sorry, that's what Asher Shifa is. Abesadya is on the pillow. He would put it. I hope it didn't spill. And Rav Papa Asher Shifa would put it on the bench. So even though they were doing something that technically would be derech chiba, they did it with a shinoi so that it shouldn't be the regular derech chiba. Now we know that you're not allowed to pour wine for your wife. The same way it's also for a wife to do that for her husband. It's also for a husband to do that to the wife. So what do you do when you're giving out kiddush wine? So there's different nagam what people do. Some people, what they do is they drink from their kodesh and they just put it down. And then the mother comes, if she's an eater, and gives it out. Some have multiple little cups in front of them, and they fill up all the cups, and then they're distributed, but there's no cup of wine that's poured specifically by the husband for the wife. Tosfos has a discussion here. Rashi says that this was done bimei libuna, which would be mashma that's when she's already counting the shiv nikim. But while she was actively seeing them, there would have been a difference. She wouldn't have been allowed. The problem with that is we know that there's no difference at all. If a woman didn't go to the mikvah, she's just as osir bimei libuna as she is when she's actively seeing them. So Tosfos could be in those days they would go to the mikvah when they started the shiv nikim, and therefore to minimize the tumah, because with the raisa, really you can go to the mikvah at that point. So could be that's why there was such a difference. But Tosfos also speaks out that handing anything, brings out from the Machshir Victory, that handing anything over during the shiv nikim when the wife is osir would be also prohibited. Amar B'tzgar Chananya, Amar Huna, Hakoil Mashin B'fnei Hashamis. Hashamis is serving by the meal. So he's watching you eat all your delicacies, and he's starving there. Nevertheless, you don't have to give it to him. You make him wait till the end of the meal, and then they can eat in the kitchen. Except there's certain items that you have to feed him right away, and you cannot make him wait till the end of the meal. Chutz mi basar v'yayin, except for basar and yayin. Omar b'chista basar shomein v'yayin yoshin. If it's fatty meat, and if it's old wine, geschmack, a good high quality wine, there you're not allowed to make your shabbos wait till the end of the suda. You have to satiate his desire right away. Omar Rabba basar shomein kol hashana kula. Fatty meat all year long. Whenever you're serving that, it elicits a tremendous desire in people working with that food. So you have to give it to them right away. You can't torture them by making them wait until after the meal. And yayin yoshan with kubas tammuz. In the month of Tammuz, wine has a particularly strong aroma, which means it'll catch him his attention and it will seize him, and therefore you have to give him some right away. I was once being a shamus in front of Mar Shmuel. I brought him a tavshil of ardi. I believe it was a mushroom dish. I think Rashi says it was a mushroom dish. Okay, and it was very a nice aroma. It was really good. Bilav the yoyev li, and he did not let me taste from it right away during the meal. Is stakni. I would have become sick from the tremendous desire to want that food and having to restrain myself. That would have caused that I should be sick. That's what we do every kids, right? The Isila gargle it, and I tell my wife I'm not eating because it's unhealthy. It's for my health. The Gemara says it's stakni. That's right. The Isili gargalidi the lifta b'chalal. He brought me slices of turnip that was soaked in vinegar. That was tremendously delicious. The ilav the yoivli, had he not let me taste from it right away, is stakni, I would have become sick. Rav Papa says, afilu tamrosa the hanunisa, even tamrosa the hanunisa, which is some type of date dish. Rashi says tamar shemein, it's a fatty date. That also would cause sickness if you don't let him have some. Klal the mill. So what's the general rule? Called this rechaya, this kiyua. If it has a strong aroma and a strong taste, those things you cannot make the shabbos wait. You have to give them right away. Avua bar'i uminyamin bar'i. These are two people. One of them would let the shabbos eat as he's serving from every little dish that he served. And one only let him have from one of them eat. So one was more merciful with his shamas. Because of that, Mar Mishtoy Eliobate, one of these two people, Elio, would learn with him and talk to him. Umar lo mishtay lo b'day. Elio was makbid on this chesed. Hanu tartan chasidi. There were two chasidim. V'amila, who were there, of Mori and Rav Pinchas, b'nei Rav Chisda, the children of Chisda. Mar kodim safi. One would, at the beginning of the meal, right away, have his waiters taste all the food. Umar ma'achas safi would make them wait before he let them eat. The kodim safi Elio mishtay b'day. The ma'achas safi lo mishtay Elio b'day. And the Ben Ish Chai says that on Motzei Shabbos we sing our Zemiris about Elio. Why? Because all week long we're in a matzav of Pas B'Melech Toichel. When do you eat more elaborate meals? On Shabbos Kodesh. Elio Hanavi comes on Motzei Shabbos and he sits down in everyone's house and he writes. I believe he wants to learn it. We learned in the Gemara, and he writes a record. He records the chesadim that every Jewish family did. So he comes to everyone's house Motzei Shabbos, look at the delicacies that were served and the guests and the chesadim that were done with these delicacies, and records them. That's why we make a big deal about Elio Hanavi, because he's running around trying to record these things. So you see, Elio is very focused on Yidden who are doing chesed and sharing their food with other people. And it's even brought down, that's why by Shvoi Chamascha, we pour wine, because we want to show that we're giving guests and we're sharing with guests. That's what attracts Elio Hanavi's attention. Zok el Gemara weiter. Amemar Umar Zutro v'Ravashi have a kayasvi apischa the Abzu Malka. They were sitting there by the gate of one of the Persian kings. Chalaf also Aturnaga de Malka. The Aturnaga de Malka, Rashi says that's the Moshev Hamonos Lefnei Asorim. It's the catering team, the George of the king, the one who gave out the different portions for the people who were coming to dine with the king. Chazir Ravashi, Lamar Zutra, he saw that Mar Zutra was like dying for this food. It grasped him. You know, it's like when you walk by a geschmacker, goyish restaurant on a fast day, and you're hungry and it smells so good. And he saw the chaver apei that Mar Zutra's face became white, which would indicate panav zoyafim shenisavalo Michael. And he was afraid. Rabbi Ashi was afraid that Mar Zutra would get sick because of it. So what did he do? Shokol et ba'asei. He took his finger and anach le bepume, and he put his thumb into the food. Can you imagine a waiter serving food and his thumb is in the food, and then he put it into Mazutra's mouth that he should taste it. And Rashi tells us that he just to taste, not to swallow, because it wasn't kosher. I'm sorry. I guess he didn't have, and he wanted right away to take care of him. I'm sorry, Rashi does not say what I did. The other Mepharshim speak it out. Amr lay, so he told him. So the waiter said, "If sadisa l'sudasa the malka, you just messed up the meal. I can't serve the king something that you put your thumb into." Amr lay, so he told him, "Amai ta'avadachi. Why did you do that? Why did you ruin the king's food?" Amr lahu. So Mar Zutra, not Mar Zutra, Rabashi answered back, "I didn't ruin the king's food." What he told him was, "Manda Avar Hachi Pasul L'Maichel L'Malka." Anybody who can serve this type of food, anyone who can prepare this type of food, he should never ever be a king, a server for the king. So you're telling me that I ruin the food? You don't even deserve your job, because what you're serving the king, you should be ashamed of yourself. This is not food that's right for a king. So I only messed up food that wasn't right for a king. Amalei, am I? What's wrong with the food? Amalu, davar acher chazoibe. I saw that there's chazer in there that has leprosy. There's a sick diseased piece of meat in there. Rashi's botash chazir mitzoira.
How did you feed it?
That's what I'm saying. He just put it in his mouth. It tastes, but he didn't swallow. That's why I spoke it out earlier. So the question, so he says, you have meat in there diseased. You actually have diseased meat in there. Any guy, any waiter, any cook, any food preparation service that will serve a king meat that's diseased, you shouldn't even have your job. But that wasn't true. It wasn't true. It was fine meat. Batku, v'lo yashkachu. So he says, really? So the guy starts looking to the meat to see if there's any problem with the meat. And it was perfect, pristine meat. So what are you talking about? Shokolet basei. So Rabbi Ashi took the finger of the cook, and he put it right on top of a piece of meat. Amalahu, hachami but kisu. Did you check this piece of meat? But they checked that piece of meat, ashkachu, and they found that it had tsaras. So basically, Rabbi Ashi's life was spared, because otherwise they would have killed him for ruining the king's food. So the Rabbanan told him, Amal Rabbanan, my time is Samchas Anisa. Why were you Samech on an ace? When you knew when you stuck your thumb into the food, you knew that it was perfectly good food. So you did it on the smart that Hashem's going to make an ace and disease the food afterwards to save your life. You're not allowed to do that. Amalahu, it's not true. Before I even touched the food the first time, Chazoi Ruach Tzaras, the Kaparcha Iluya. I saw a Ruach Tzaras. I guess when you're a Bashi, you see Ruach Tzaras. He saw Ruach Tzaras there. So that was already a signal to him from the Rebbeinu Shalom that he has already a place to blame and show that there's a problem with the meat. So he knew in advance that he'd be able to get away with it. So there's actually a Shaila Lalocha. Are you allowed to risk your life to save somebody else? Is it mutter for someone to risk their life to save somebody else? So from here, it's mashma that you're not allowed to. So I'm just wondering, if you're a first responder, are you allowed to risk your life to save somebody else?
No. When you pick the culprit, the person will tell you to make sure the scene is safe for you to go to.
So you wouldn't have allowed to be a fireman on 9/11 because you wouldn't have been allowed to run up the stairs knowing that your life is in danger.
A lot of them did it because not thinking.
Okay, but that's the shayla we have. So let's go more back. There was a Roman guy. The Amrulahi Itza. He told this woman menasfusly, "Please marry me." Amrullah. She said, "No, I don't want to marry you." So what did this sadist do? Also, I see Rimni. He took a delicious fresh pomegranate. Pali, he cut it. The ochal kamo, and he ate it in front of her. She was starving to death, and he's enjoying and savoring every little bit of this delicious pomegranate. Kol maya the tsarile. So when a person sees that, a person starts to salivate. So she's salivating, but she can't eat, and she swallowed that saliva. Kol maya the tsarile belasa, she swallowed. V'lahavla, and he didn't give her. He didn't care. He was literally torturing her. Ad de zogla, until it reached a point where her skin went clear, which is a sign of tremendous hunger. Her skin became translucent. Rashi says, the zog nafchu paneu kreisa. Her face and her abdomen blew up. The nasu kischuches. They became somewhat translucent. Shekain darkein nefuchim. That's what happens. So now she was already ill. L'soif amarla. Then he told her that you're sick. Imasinalach. If I heal you, menasvusly, will you marry me then? Then she amarla in. Yes. If you heal me, I will marry you. He sort of had her stuck. Ozil Isi Rimni Pali. He went. This guy's such a chayirua. He went and he took more pomegranates that he cut in half. Oh, come on, he still didn't give it to her. His low life. Omallah, he told her, Kol mai de any saliva that comes up that you're going to want to swallow, spit out. Tuf shadoi, spit out. So she kept on spitting out this toxic saliva until a very green, looking like the leaf of a lulav, a very green saliva came out of her, vistias. And that's how she got the poison out of her body. But he still didn't give her any. Unbelievable. The ice of tzemer. She has to do malacha with tzemer. Zokt gemara b'tzemer in b'pishtim loy. Now, Shmuel, do you know that there are women who go for Botox treatment on their lips because they want to have full lips? Because having full lips is considered beautiful nowadays, right? They actually go for Botox treatment on their lips. We're going to see here that it wasn't as pretty in those days. So b'tzemer yes, but b'pishtim loy. Masnis and Mani, who's our Mishnah going like? Rabbi Yehuda, the Tanya he learned, Eina Koifa, you cannot force her. She doesn't have to serve his father, nor does she have to serve his children. She only has to serve him. And not to put straw in front of his behemoths. And Rashi tells us, Maval Harayin, is that all other behemoths will have an urge, a desire to copulate with her. and we're afraid that she will copulate with them, and therefore we don't let her feed them food. But in front of Bakar, Rashi says Bakar don't have such a interest in humans, and therefore the Bakar won't want her. So therefore we're not worried that she'll have relations with the animals. And Rashi says could be a different pshat is Behema means male animals and Bakar means female animals. I mean, I don't understand how the Gemaras could say that a Jewish woman should be choshed. I don't know. It's very difficult for me to understand. That's right. So I don't understand this. Rabbi Yehuda Omer, but Rashi sticks in a little more. Rashi says that since the behemoth will come onto her, she might be nisis loy. It's hard for us to imagine how that works. Rabbi Yehuda Omer, you can't force her to work with flax. You know why? It makes you have bad breath, and it blows up your lips. So you see that having full lips is a chesaron, not a mila. And Rashi says because she'd have to thread the threads of fission through her mouth as she was processing it. I don't know exactly what the process is, but that would cause, since you have to put it in her mouth and put it in her saliva, it'll make her have bad breath and it'll swell up her lips. That's not all flax, only kisna rumah causes that condition. Even if she's 100 shifchois, a woman has to be busy. Amr of Machiyoi, Amr of Adabar Ava, halacha Rabbi Eliezer, the halacha of Rabbi Eliezer, that no matter what, a woman has to work. Amr of Chanina Bered Rabbika, Shavud, there's a halacha that was said about Shavud, in Beya, Shvachis is our halacha, the Gumais, Rabbi Machiyoi is, who is the author of these brises, is Rabbi Machiyoi. So in fact, Amr of Machiyoi, Amr of Adabar Ava, halacha Rabbi Eliezer. So it's Rabbi Machiyoi talking. Beluris, the Mishnah speaks about Beluris, about Efer Mikla, and about Gevina, that was Rabbi Machiyah with an aleph. Rav Papa Amar, Masnisinu Masnisa is Rabbi Machiyah. Shmaitza, if it's not a Mishnah or a Brisa that they were talking about, rather they're talking about halacha that was said in the Gemara, that would be Rabbi Machiyah, which would be inconsistent with what we just said, because Rabbi Machiyah, in our case, said halacha Rabbi Eliezer, and that's not a Shmaitza, that's actually a Mishnah. The Simanach Masnisa Malchasa. If it's a Mishnah, it's Machasa, meaning Machiyah, not Machiyah. My Benayu, what is the difference? Ikmanu Shvacha is exactly our case, because like the first Nusach, Rab Machiyah is the one who said this halacha, halacha Rabbi Eliezer. But if the second expression, it would have been Machiyah. Rabbi Shimon Gamliel Omer, Hainu Tanakam, didn't Rabbi Shimon Gamliel say the same thing, right? The religion says if a woman doesn't work, it brings with it nus, and Rabbi Shimon Gamliel said it brings with it zima. What's the difference? Hainu Tanakam. If he could entertain her in a different way, he buys her a little dog, which entertains her, or if she plays chess, those are ways where she'll be entertained. Those will not lead to shimon, it won't lead to retardation, but it will still lead to znus. So therefore, it's better that she should have a productive job. What if a man says, now a man cannot say, I will not give you tashma shamita, because it's in his kshuba, he's mechuyev, it's not his to answer. But what a man could say is, I will not have enough from tashmish with you. So he's answering her on him. It has the same effect, but it's another that he could make. So the halacha is, up to 2 weeks, we will let him get away with that, and after that, it ruins his marriage. He has to divorce her and give her kshuba. Even 1 week is enough. Let's say her husband wants to go learn. He's allowed to leave home to go learn, even against her will. How long? For up to 30 days. Normal workers are allowed to go away for a week, period. Now we want to know what is the normal amount of times a person is supposed to have relations with his wife. So like we learned, people are in the tile business every single day. Now we're going to see what tayalim are. It doesn't necessarily mean, people who lay ceramic tiles. The Gemara is going to discuss what it is. Hapayalim Shtayim b'Shabbos, a standard worker who comes home every night, twice a week. Hachamorim, somebody who is a short haul truck driver, achas b'Shabbos, once a week. Hagamalim, someone who's a long haul truck driver, achas l'shloshim yoim. Hasaponim, someone who is a captain of a ship, he works in the marine industry, achas l'shisha chadoshim, once every 6 months. Divrei Rabbi Eliezer, this is the halacha of Rabbi Eliezer.
This is Rashi brings this Mishnah down when I think Yaakov was giving the gifts to Esav. The animals were listed, and somehow a drush is made from that, and Rashi brings down this.
Practice by Yishlach when Yaakov met Esav.
Yeah.
Interesting. It's interesting that the drush would be there.
I know it's a weird connection.
Wow. Okay, so let's see more. My time with the Beis Shammai.
Because I think it was the animals, the male to female.
The ratios, you mean?
Ratios, yeah. It's not a dry. It's a very far-fetched draw.
It's a loose connection, but
very loose.
Based on the ratios of male to females, Rashi drew a parallel of how often they have to have relations.
I think that's the case, yeah.
So my time with the Beis Shammai, what is for a Beis Shammai who says that it's 2 weeks? Gami miyoldus lekeva, a woman who gives birth to a nekeva, she's tummy for 2 weeks, so she can't have relations for 2 weeks. So you see, it's a normal amount of time to be apart. We still gami miyoldus zocher, a woman who gives birth to a male, she's only tummy for a week. So therefore, it's a week is the normal time. The fact is that you see a yoldus is a normal thing. You see it's a normal thing that they should be separated for 2 weeks. Zok Gemara, you're right. If they were looking at from yoldus, which generally is not so common, I mean it happens once a year, but not necessarily regular basis. Hakanami, I would agree with you that even once every 2 weeks. Ela Basil Nida Gamrila. Basil says no, we need to learn it out of something that's even more common, like Nida, which is a monthly cycle. And there, a woman is usher for 1 week, and that's why Basil holds 1 week is the maximum. But makamifli, Bar Sover, Midi the Shchiach, Midi the Shchiach. Basil learns you should learn something that's Shchiach, someone traveling, from something that's Shchiach, which is Nida. I'm sorry, Midi the Shchiach is not someone traveling. We're speaking about making a nether. So what's Midi the Shchiach? This is also an interesting Rashi. Kas shekayish al ishtoi umadira. It's a normal thing that a person should lose his temper against his wife and make an isser for him to have via. I don't know anybody who ever did that, but maybe in those days it was something that was common. So since it was common, it would be totally in Nidar. I hear. Umar Savar Midi the who gorim law, Mimidi the who gorim law. He caused it. If he made a nether, something that he caused, we should learn it out of having a child which he caused. Amarav, Machloikis b'mafarish. The Machloikis is only if he says 2 weeks, 1 week, whether that will force him to divorce his wife. Aval b'stam, but if he just says, I'm not going to have relations with you, which means forever, you immediately terminate the marriage, and he has to give her a ksuba. Shmuel says, Afilu b'stam, even if he made another stam, which would be forever, Nami Yamtin Shema Yimtza Pesach Nidra. You give him either the 1 week according to Beis Hillel, or the 2 weeks according to Beis Shammai, or is it the opposite? No, it's a 2 weeks according to Beis Shammai, the 1 week according to Beis Hillel, to find a Pesach for his nether. Zok Gemara, if that's what it is, we already know this machlokes. It's not we learned. If someone made a nether that his wife cannot have enough from him, so this is not tashmish related. This is anything. If it's only up until 30 days, he made this nether without a time limit. So for 30 days, Yamid Parnis, he can actually get somebody else to take care of his wife. Yosy becomes once 30 days passes, Yosy eating ksuba. He has to divorce her and give her ksuba. Well, Rav and Rav said, Lo shanu ela b'mafarish. That it's 30 days is only if you specify 30 days. Aval b'stam, but if he just asked her to have any enough of him without a time limit, Yosy eating altar. And then Yosy altar eating ksuba. He has to divorce her and give her ksuba. Or Shmuel marfilu b'stam nami yamtin. You give him a month. Shema Yimta Pasach Lenidroi, maybe he'll be able to get out of the net. So why do they need to argue by a case of a man ushering him to support her and by a man ushering himself to have beer with her? There should be the same thing. The whole shaila is if we say Shema Yimta Pasach Lenidroi, right? More tricha. The Yitmer Baha, if the machlokes is only in our case with bia, Bahakam Rav, their Rav said that you have to give her a get right away. You know why? Because Mishum Delay Abshir Beparnas. It's not like he can have someone stand in his place for a month, like with Parnasa. With bia, that's not an option. So therefore, Rav says it's usher. He has to give her a get right away. Abu Bahiba, if it's only money, the Abshir Beparnas, where there is an interim solution, maybe you would agree to Shmuel that he doesn't have to give a get. And if you only have the case of the mominus, Shmuel. Maybe Shmuel will be Rav that there is no interim solution. Tzricha, that's where the machlokes has to be side by Parnasa and side by Tashmish. Okay, we'll stop here and we'll mamshech tomorrow. Tomorrow is a beautiful, one of the most beautiful letter in Gan Shas is tomorrow. Because tomorrow we're learning the story about, or at least we're starting the story of Rabbi Akiva and his wife, and how they met, and what happened with them. Oh, that's tomorrow's blot. I'm sorry, Kathy Wood is tomorrow's blot.